The atmospheric processor hummed its familiar tune as Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool metal bulkhead of the Meridian, watching Kepler 442c rotate slowly beneath them through the observation deck's reinforced viewport. 3 months of stellar cartography, xenobiological sampling, and enough recycled protein bars to build a small space station. And still, the planet held secrets that made her scanner readings look like abstract art. "You're doing that thing again," Chief Engineer Torres called from across the deck, not bothering to look up from his quantum calibrator. "That dreamy scientist stare. Last time you looked like that, you tried to pet a Rigelian plasma eel." Elena rolled her eyes, though she couldn't suppress a smile. "That was one time, and technically it wasn't trying to kill me until I touched it. Right, it was just having an aggressive conversation with your hand." The bioscanner on her wrist chirped insistently, displaying atmospheric readings from the automated probe she deployed 6 hours ago. Oxygen levels perfect for human respiration, nitrogen baseline normal, trace gases all within acceptable parameters. Everything looked pristine down there, which meant either the planet was genuinely paradise, or it was hiding something that would make her wish she'd stayed in graduate school studying Earth fungi. "Probe 7 is acting up again," she muttered, watching the data stream stutter and jump like a nervous first-year student presenting their thesis. The crystalline forest readings were especially erratic, showing bioluminescent signatures that shouldn't exist in nature but clearly did. Commander Sarah Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system. "All department heads to the bridge for mission briefing in 30 minutes. Elena, bring those atmospheric reports." Elena sighed and pushed away from the viewport. The Meridian was scheduled to begin its return journey to Earth in 72 hours, which meant she had exactly 3 days to solve the mystery of why a supposedly uninhabited planet was giving her equipment the electronic equivalent of hiccups. 20 minutes later, she stood in her quarters staring at her reflection in the small mirror, trying to make her unruly brown hair look professional rather than like she'd stuck her finger in a plasma conduit. Her grandmother had always said she had her father's stubborn cowlick and her mother's habit of forgetting to brush it. At least her lab coat was clean, even if it did have a suspicious stain from yesterday's encounter with a leaking specimen container. The bridge buzzed with quiet efficiency as Elena entered, her tablet full of anomalous readings tucked under her arm. Commander Rodriguez stood at the central console, her silver hair pulled back in regulation style, studying the holographic display of the planet below. "Vasquez, tell me about these atmospheric inconsistencies," Rodriguez said without preamble. Elena activated her tablet and gestured toward the main display. "The automated probes are registering bioluminescent signatures throughout the crystalline forest sectors. The readings suggest complex organic compounds that shouldn't exist naturally, but there's no indication of technological interference. Maybe the trees are just having a disco party," Lieutenant Kim offered from the navigation station, earning a few chuckles from the bridge crew. "Funnier than my plasma eel theory," Torres added via comm link from engineering. Elena continued, ignoring the commentary. Probe 7 crashed approximately 6 kilometers into the forest zone. The last transmission showed massive crystalline structures intertwined with organic growth patterns. "I'd like permission to retrieve the probe and conduct close-range analysis." Rodriguez frowned at the display. "Negative. We're not risking personnel for equipment recovery, especially not with departure protocols beginning tomorrow. Commander, that probe contains 3 months of atmospheric data and a quantum bioscanner worth more than my graduate student loan debt. Plus, the readings just before it went dark showed something that looked suspiciously like organized patterns in the bioluminescence. Organized patterns don't justify a surface mission." Elena opened her mouth to argue, then caught the expression on Rodriguez's face. She'd seen that look before. It was the same one her dissertation advisor had worn when Elena suggested that her research into extremophile bacteria might lead to discovering alien life. Polite skepticism mixed with the patience of someone dealing with an overenthusiastic scientist. "Understood, Commander," Elena said, though her mind was already working through alternative approaches. 4 hours later, Elena stood in the shuttle bay, running pre-flight checks on the Curiosity. Technically, she wasn't violating direct orders. Rodriguez had said no personnel retrieval missions, but she hadn't specifically forbidden equipment maintenance flights. And if Elena happened to swing by the probe site during routine atmospheric sampling, well, that was just efficient resource management. "You know the commander is going to space you if she finds out about this," Torres said, appearing beside the shuttle with a tool kit and a worried expression. "She'll have to catch me first," Elena replied, sealing her helmet. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? I find some interesting plants and bring back a broken probe." Famous last words. Right up there with, "What could possibly go wrong, and I'm sure it's perfectly safe." Elena laughed and climbed into the pilot's seat. "Torres, you worry too much. I'm just going to grab some equipment and maybe collect a few samples. I'll be back before dinner, and you can regale everyone with stories about how I almost got eaten by a phosphorescent fern." The shuttle's engines hummed to life as Elena ran through the departure checklist. Through the bay's force field, Kepler 442c beckoned with its swirling clouds and mysterious forests. Somewhere down there, among the crystal trees and glowing plants, lay answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask yet. As the Curiosity cleared the Meridian's docking bay, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to discover something that would change everything. Whether that change would be for better or worse remained to be seen, but at least it would be interesting. The planet's atmosphere embraced the shuttle gently, as Elena guided it toward the coordinates where Probe 7 had met its untimely demise. The Curiosity's landing thrusters kicked up a small cloud of iridescent dust as Elena set the shuttle down in a clearing roughly 50 meters from where her scanner indicated Probe 7 had crash-landed. Through the cockpit window, she could see the crystalline forest stretching in all directions, each tree seeming to pulse with its own internal light rhythm, like a vast orchestra of bioluminescent musicians warming up before a concert. "Well, this is either beautiful or terrifying," she muttered into her comm unit, checking the atmospheric readings one more time. "Probably both." She grabbed her field kit and emergency beacon, then paused at the shuttle's airlock. Her training protocols screamed at her to wait for backup, establish a perimeter, and follow proper xenological contact procedures. Her Curiosity told her training protocols to go file a complaint with the bureaucracy department. The forest air tasted different than the recycled atmosphere aboard the Meridian. Cleaner somehow, with an almost electric quality that made her tongue tingle slightly. Elena activated her portable scanner and began following the beacon signal toward Probe 7's last known position, her boots crunching softly on what appeared to be crystallized fallen leaves. "Personal log, day 93, she spoke into her recorder. "Preliminary surface analysis shows no immediate hazards, though I'm beginning to understand why the probe readings were so erratic. The trees aren't just bioluminescent. They're actually generating some kind of electromagnetic field that's playing havoc with my equipment." A soft chiming sound echoed through the forest, almost musical in nature. Elena paused, listening carefully. The sound repeated, coming from somewhere ahead and to her left. She adjusted her course, following both the probe signal and her growing curiosity about the mysterious chiming. 20 minutes of careful navigation through the crystal grove brought her to a small clearing where Probe 7 lay partially buried under a pile of what looked like deliberately arranged crystalline branches. Elena blinked in surprise. Probe crashes were typically random affairs involving scattered debris and impact craters. This looked more like someone had carefully covered the probe with forest materials. "Okay, that's new," she said, kneeling beside the probe. "Either this planet has the most organized natural phenomena in the galaxy, or I'm about to meet the neighbors." As if summoned by her words, the chiming sound rang out again, much closer this time. Alina looked up to see a figure emerging from behind one of the larger crystal trees, moving with a fluid grace that spoke of complete familiarity with the forest environment. Alina's scanner immediately began displaying readings that made no sense whatsoever. Humanoid life form, definitely, but the biological signatures were unlike anything in her xenological database. She stared as the figure approached, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The woman, and it was clearly a woman, despite the elongated, pointed ears that caught and reflected the forest's ambient light, moved with the confident stride of someone in their own backyard. She wore clothing that seemed to be made from the same crystalline material as the trees, shifting and shimmering with each step. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her skin had a subtle luminescence that matched the forest around them. Alina tried to remember her xenological first contact protocols. Step 1, remain calm. Step 2, attempt peaceful communication. Step 3, don't do anything that might be interpreted as hostile. Step 4, definitely don't trip over your own feet while staring at an alien woman. She promptly failed Step 4. Her boot caught on a protruding root, sending her stumbling forward with the kind of graceless momentum that belonged in a comedy routine rather than a historic first contact scenario. Her scanner went flying in one direction, her sample kit scattered in another, and she ended up face first in a pile of soft, glowing moss that smelled like cinnamon and ozone. "Smooth, Alina," she muttered, pushing herself up on her elbows. Really making humanity look sophisticated here. The alien woman had stopped several meters away, one hand pressed to her mouth in what Alina desperately hoped was suppressed laughter rather than horror. After a moment, she lowered her hand and spoke in a melodious language that sounded like wind chimes having a conversation with a babbling brook. Alina sat up, brushing luminescent moss from her hair. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Do you speak standard, English charades?" The woman tilted her head, those distinctive ears twitching slightly, then reached into what Alina now realized was some kind of utility pouch woven into her crystalline garment. She withdrew a small, smooth stone that began glowing as soon as it touched her palm. "Testing, testing," the stone said in perfect English, though with a slight accent Alina couldn't place. "Ah, there we are. Universal translator, though it sometimes takes a moment to calibrate to new languages." Alina blinked in amazement. "That's incredible technology. How does it work? Is it quantum-based, bioneural processing?" The woman smiled and Alina felt her breath catch. "You ask many questions very quickly. Are all of your people so energetic?" "Only the scientists," Alina replied, then realized she should probably introduce herself properly. "I'm Dr. Alina Vasquez, xenobiologist with the Earth Confederation Research Vessel Meridian *. I came down here to retrieve our crashed probe, but I should have announced our presence properly. We didn't realize this world was inhabited. I am Lyra of the 7th Grove, and you are standing in my workspace," the alien woman said, gesturing toward the covered probe. "Your flying device was leaking something that made the crystal singers ill, so..." Alina's comm unit buzzed insistently as she knelt beside Lyra, watching the Ethani woman's hands glow with soft bioluminescence as she worked to heal the damaged crystal singer. 3 hours had passed since their first meeting, and Alina was beginning to understand why her equipment had been sending back such confusing readings. "Dr. Vasquez to Meridian *, she said, activating her comm with one hand while trying to take notes with the other. "I'm going to need an extension on my surface time. The probe recovery is more complicated than anticipated." Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled through, with barely concealed irritation. "Vasquez, you were supposed to check in 2 hours ago. What's your status?" Alina glanced at Lyra, who was listening with obvious interest despite the language barrier her translator couldn't bridge for radio communications. "I've encountered an indigenous life form, Commander. Friendly contact has been established, and I'm currently engaged in preliminary cultural exchange. You found aliens and decided to have tea with them instead of following protocol. More like I found an alien and she's teaching me advanced biochemistry, Alina replied, watching Lyra coax a crystalline branch back to its natural luminescent state. Commander, what I'm seeing here could revolutionize our understanding of bio-neural networks and planetary consciousness. A pause, planetary consciousness. Alina winced, realizing she might have just opened a very large can of bureaucratic worms. I'll file a full report when I return to the ship. Request permission to extend surface operations for additional research. Denied. Return to the * meridian immediately for debrief and proper first contact protocols. But Commander, that's in order, Doctor. Alina sighed and closed the comm channel, looking apologetically at Lyra. I have to return to my ship. My commander wants to follow proper procedures for first contact situations. Lyra's ears drooped slightly. Your people have many rules about meeting new friends. You have no idea. We have rules about rules and committees to decide which rules apply to the rules about rules. Alina stood up, brushing crystalline dust from her knees. But I'd like to come back if you're willing. There's so much I want to learn about the crystal singers and your people. The Ethani welcome knowledge seekers, Lyra said, rising gracefully. Though perhaps next time you could arrive without crashing something first. Alina laughed. I'll work on that. Maybe I can convince them to let me take the shuttle for scenic flights instead of emergency equipment recovery. The journey back to the Curiosity took twice as long as Alina's original trek, mainly because she kept stopping to examine every interesting plant, crystal formation, and bioluminescent phenomenon they encountered. Lyra proved to be an excellent guide, answering Alina's rapid-fire questions with the patience of someone accustomed to curious younglings. The singing trees communicate through quantum-entangled biocrystals, Lyra explained as they passed a grove of particularly tall specimens. Each tree is both individual and part of the greater forest consciousness. Alina's comm unit buzzed insistently as she knelt beside Lyra, watching the Ethani woman's hands glow with soft bioluminescence as she worked to heal the damaged crystal singer. 3 hours had passed since their first meeting, and Alina was beginning to understand why her equipment had been sending back such confusing readings. Dr. Vasquez to *meridian*, she said, activating her comm with one hand while trying to take notes with the other. I'm going to need an extension on my surface time. The probe recovery is more complicated than anticipated. Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled through, with barely concealed irritation. Vasquez, you were supposed to check in 2 hours ago. What's your status? Alina glanced at Lyra, who was listening with obvious interest despite the language barrier her translator couldn't bridge for radio communications. I've encountered an indigenous life form, Commander. Friendly contact has been established, and I'm currently engaged in preliminary cultural exchange. You found aliens and decided to have tea with them instead of following protocol. More like I found an alien and she's teaching me advanced biochemistry, Alina replied, watching Lyra coax a crystalline branch back to its natural luminescent state. Commander, what I'm seeing here could revolutionize our understanding of bio-neural networks and planetary consciousness. A pause, planetary consciousness. Alina winced, realizing she might have just opened a very large can of bureaucratic worms. I'll file a full report when I return to the ship. Request permission to extend surface operations for additional research. Denied. Return to the * meridian immediately for debrief and proper first contact protocols. But Commander, that's in order, Doctor. Alina sighed and closed the comm channel, looking apologetically at Lyra. I have to return to my ship. My commander wants to follow proper procedures for first contact situations. Lyra's ears drooped slightly. Your people have many rules about meeting new friends. You have no idea. We have rules about rules and committees to decide which rules apply to the rules about rules. Elena stood up, brushing crystalline dust from her knees. But I'd like to come back if you're willing. There's so much I want to learn about the crystal singers and your people. The Ethani welcome knowledge seekers, Lyra said, rising gracefully. Though perhaps next time you could arrive without crashing something first. Elena laughed. I'll work on that. Maybe I can convince them to let me take the shuttle for scenic flights instead of emergency equipment recovery. The journey back to the Curiosity took twice as long as Elena's original trek, mainly because she kept stopping to examine every interesting plant, crystal formation, and bioluminescent phenomenon they encountered. Lyra proved to be an excellent guide, answering Elena's rapid-fire questions with the patience of someone accustomed to curious younglings. The singing trees communicate through quantum-entangled biocrystals, Lyra explained as they passed a grove of particularly tall specimens. Each tree is both individual and part of the greater forest consciousness, like fingers on a hand, separate but connected. Quantum entanglement in biological systems, Elena murmured, furiously scribbling notes. That should be impossible according to everything we know about quantum decoherence in warm, wet environments. Your science says many things are impossible that we do every day, Lyra replied with obvious amusement. Perhaps your science needs to ask better questions. Elena paused in her note-taking. That's actually a fair point. We do tend to assume our limitations are universal laws. They reached the shuttle just as Elena's comm unit began buzzing again. Commander Rodriguez's voice emerged with the kind of controlled calm that meant someone was about to spend a very uncomfortable evening in debriefing. Vasquez, I'm reading your shuttle's position. You should have been airborne 20 minutes ago. Sorry, Commander. I got distracted by some fascinating botanical specimens, preparing for departure now. Elena turned to Lyra, who was examining the asterisk Curiosity with obvious curiosity. Thank you for showing me your forest and teaching me about the crystal singers. I hope I can return soon. I would like that, Lyra said simply. Perhaps next time you can tell me more about your flying houses and your people who make rules about meeting friends. Elena climbed into the shuttle's cockpit, then impulsively leaned out. Lyra, would you be interested in seeing what human technology looks like? Not crashing into your forest, I mean, but actually working properly. Lyra's ears perked up with interest. Your flying house has interesting technology. 3 weeks had passed since Elena's first encounter with Lyra, and their daily meetings in the Crystal Forest had become the highlight of both women's routines. Elena had convinced Commander Rodriguez to establish a temporary research station near the edge of the grove, complete with Tor's latest invention, a coffee maker that only occasionally produced beverages that glowed in the dark. I still don't understand how you drink that liquid torture, Lyra said, watching Elena sip from her steaming mug while they sat beneath a particularly melodious crystal singer that hummed soft harmonies in the morning light. Coffee is one of humanity's greatest achievements, Elena replied solemnly. Right up there with faster-than-light travel and discovering that chocolate improves everything. Your people have strange priorities, Lyra observed, though her tone was fond rather than critical. Though I admit, watching Tor's attempt to explain quantum mechanics to the younglings yesterday was quite entertaining. Elena laughed, remembering the scene. Tor's had tried to demonstrate wave-particle duality using hand gestures and sound effects, resulting in a group of young Ethani who now believed human physics involved a lot of swooshing noises and dramatic arm movements. Speaking of the younglings, Elena said carefully, there's something I need to discuss with you. Commander Rodriguez received new orders from Earth Command yesterday. Lyra's ears drooped slightly. A response Elena had learned indicated worry. Bad news. Not bad exactly, but complicated. Elena set down her coffee and pulled out her data pad. Earth Command is sending a full diplomatic and scientific mission to establish formal relations with your people. They'll arrive in about 6 months. That sounds positive, Lyra said, though her expression remained cautious. It would be, except. Alina hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. Some of the people coming aren't scientists. They're resource assessment specialists and colonial administration officials. Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently stroking the crystalline bark of the tree they sat beneath. They want to take our world. Some of them might, Alina admitted. But others genuinely want to learn from your people and establish peaceful relations. The problem is telling the difference before it's too late. What do you suggest? Alina took a deep breath. The Ethani need to make their first impression count. Show Earth Command that your people are not primitive locals who can be pushed around, but equals with technology and knowledge that could benefit both our species. Lyra's eyes lit up with understanding. A demonstration. Exactly. Something that makes it clear that any relationship with the Ethani has to be based on mutual respect and cooperation. Over the next hour, they developed a plan that would have made Alina's diplomatic protocol instructors either very proud or very horrified. Possibly both. 2 months later, the Meridian's sensors detected the arrival of Earth Command's diplomatic vessel, the Concordia right on schedule. Alina stood in the observation deck watching the massive ship take orbit alongside their much smaller research vessel, her stomach churning with nervous anticipation. You know this is either going to work brilliantly or get us all court-martialed, Torres said, joining her at the viewport. Probably both, Alina replied, but at least it'll be interesting. Commander Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's comm system. All senior staff to the docking bay. The diplomatic delegation will be arriving via shuttle in 30 minutes. Alina smoothed her dress uniform and checked her appearance one final time. Over the past 2 months, she'd learned to braid her hair in the Ethani style, incorporating small bioluminescent crystals that Lyra had given her. The effect was subtle but noticeable, a visual reminder that she had become something more than just a visiting scientist. The delegation that emerged from the diplomatic shuttle was exactly what Alina had expected. A mixture of career diplomats, military officials, and corporate representatives, all wearing expressions of barely contained excitement at the prospect of humanity's first major alien contact. Ambassador Patricia Hendricks, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of smile that could negotiate peace treaties or declare wars with equal effectiveness, stepped forward. Commander Rodriguez, Dr. Vasquez. I trust the situation here has remained stable. Very stable, Ambassador, Alina replied. The Ethani have been remarkably accommodating hosts. They've even prepared a welcome ceremony in your honor. Excellent. We're eager to begin formal negotiations. Alina exchanged glances with Torres. About that, the Ethani have some rather specific customs regarding diplomatic meetings. They'd like to conduct the initial ceremony in their sacred grove, where their planetary consciousness can participate directly. Ambassador Hendricks raised an eyebrow. Planetary consciousness. It's a bit complicated to explain, Alina said with studied casualness. But essentially, the entire planet is sentient. The trees, the crystals, the bioluminescent networks, it's all part of a single, vast intelligence that the Ethani live in harmony with. The corporate representative, a thin man named Davidson who had been taking notes constantly, looked up sharply. Are you saying this planet is essentially a living entity? Not essentially, Alina corrected, literally. And it's been looking forward to meeting you. The diplomatic party's shuttle ride to the Grove was filled with the kind of tense silence that preceded either historic breakthroughs or spectacular disasters. Alina spent the flight checking her comm unit for updates from Lyra and trying not to think about all the ways their plan could go horribly wrong. The Crystal Grove had been transformed for the occasion. Hundreds of Ethani had gathered among the trees, their bioluminescent clothing creating patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with the forest's natural harmonies. At the center of the clearing stood Lyra, wearing ceremonial robes that seemed to be made from living crystal, her elongated ears adorned with jewelry that chimed softly in harmony with the trees. "Ambassador Hendricks," Alina said formally, "may I present Lyra of the Seventh Grove, speaker for the planetary consciousness of Kepler 442c. Lyra stepped forward with regal grace, her universal translator rendering her words into perfect diplomatic English. "Welcome, travelers from the distant world of Earth. We greet you in the name of all living things that call this world home." The demonstration that followed was everything Alina had hoped for and more. The crystal singers began a complex harmonic sequence that made the entire grove resonate like a vast musical instrument. Bioluminescent patterns flowed through the trees in waves, creating visual displays that rivaled anything human technology could produce. And at the center of it all, Lyra served as conductor and translator, channeling the planet's consciousness into words the human delegation could understand. "Your people have sent probes into our outer atmosphere," the planetary consciousness spoke through Lyra. "We felt their passage like whispers in the wind. We have been curious about the small minds that created such clever flying devices." Ambassador Hendricks, to her credit, recovered her diplomatic composure quickly. "We are honored by your welcome, and we apologize if our probes caused any disturbance." "No disturbance, only curiosity. Your Dr. Vasquez has been an excellent ambassador for your species. She learns quickly, asks thoughtful questions, and only rarely crashes things into our forest." Alina felt her cheeks burn as several members of the delegation turned to stare at her. "That was one time," she muttered. "Actually," Lyra added with obvious amusement, "it was 3 times, but who counts among friends?" The formal ceremonies continued for several hours, during which the Ethani demonstrated their bio-neural technology, their quantum-entangled communication networks, and their ability to interface directly with their planet's consciousness. By the end of the day, even the most skeptical corporate representatives were forced to acknowledge that humanity had encountered something far beyond their understanding or ability to control. "This changes everything," Ambassador Hendricks said privately to Alina as they prepared to return to the asterisk Meridia. "The colonial administration was hoping for a standard resource extraction scenario. Instead, we found a sentient planet with technology that could revolutionize human civilization. And a people who are willing to share that knowledge," Alina added, "if we approach them as equals rather than subjects." 3 months later, Alina stood in the same grove where she had first crashed into Lyra's life, watching the sun set through the crystal branches while her alien friend worked to heal another group of damaged trees. These ones affected by the *Concordia's *atmospheric processors, which had been installed